It's the Dean's List on Bermuda College Radio. Live 4.0, powered by the great folks at One Communications. One gives you more.
Yes, yes, yes. Happy Friday, beautiful people. It is the Dean's List on Bermuda College Radio Live 4.0, proudly powered by those great folks over at One Communications. I am joined by an extremely special guest, none other than Her Excellency, the Governor. Hello, Governor. I'm sorry, I've always wanted to say that. Just forgive me. I've always wanted to say that. How are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you. I hope you are
Thank
too.
you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to hop on a call with us. We greatly appreciate it. So just to give people a little backstory, you are the governor of Bermuda, and this is, I believe, your first tenure. Been a couple of months in office.
Yes.
A couple of months, and of course, you came at a crazy time. But growing up, like, when you were just give us a backstory of where you're from, and is this something that you've always wanted to do? Is this something that you saw in your future, or where you like, what, I'm gonna just be an accountant, or I'm gonna just be a royal princess or something like that? What was it like growing up for Her Excellency?
Thank you. So I grew up in I was born and grew up in West London, and I definitely didn't have sort of, in terms of the people that I could look at around me, my family, friends, wider community. There wasn't really a reference point which would have meant that I would have understood or could have described what a governor was, or aspired to be a governor, or indeed actually a civil servant more generally. So I do come from, there were lots of public servants around me, and I think my public service ethos comes from that sort of family members and people in my community who were kind of nurses and teachers and police officers, etc. And so that definitely inspired my public service ethos. But this is not something that I saw, and I think actually even if I rewound 10 years and maybe a bit more, if someone had asked me, then I definitely wouldn't have said confidently that this was something that was in my future. But it was something that I'd been thinking about for a while. And whilst I thought when I thought about it as an option, something I thought would be great to do, I would not have been and I wasn't particularly confident that it was something that I could make happen. So that is definitely, it's definitely not something that, and I'm more generally not someone who has like a career planned out ahead of me. So in that way, and so yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you was like, what? I'm gonna just be a civil servant.
Yeah.
I don't know about being a governor, but I'm gonna be a civil servant.
No, definitely. So that was a conscious choice for me, for sure. And I think as a child, though, I probably had very different dreams. I had thought about, I definitely had a phase of wanting to be a lawyer, and I had, I don't know, it was probably the sort of the strong will and the argumentative nature that might have made me think about that as an option. It's strange how you see the reflection of yourself in your children. So when I see those traits in my children, I have to remind myself, they got it from somewhere.
That's very good. I'm glad, as a parent, you were willing to admit that, because I know my mother probably wouldn't admit that. Like, sis, I got it.
I didn't say I told them that. I just said that I recognize it in myself. Like in the moment, obviously I can recognize my husband's traits in them in the moment.
Okay, all right. So you're all right. I understand. You're like, no, I ain't gonna admit it, but I get it. I get it. But I'm not gonna admit that. So I know that they know, but I know that they won't know. I got you.
There we go.
I got you, Your Excellency. But no, that's very funny that you mentioned that. Because like I said, my mother, she would be like, where do you get this attitude from, or where do you get your strong will from? I'm like, I got it from you, sis. What are you talking about?
But it is something that I do think about, because definitely one of the things for my generation, I think lots of those traits would have been I was probably like lots of girls growing up, that reflection that they are negative. So those kind of more negative labels, the sort of, she's bossy, and she talks too much, or she's loud, or all of those kinds of things, which actually, when I look back now, and this is why I do sort of just try to hold my tongue in those moments, because I think a lot of that can be beaten out of us as girls. And I don't mean literally beaten out of them, but you know what I
Right.
mean. You kind of, over time, you learn that you have to kind of carry yourself and walk differently in the world. And actually, my firm belief is that to be a woman who wants to kind of achieve and to deal with the issues that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and particularly as a black woman, as a woman of color, or anywhere in the world, like, actually you need some of that sort of fighting spirit. And
Absolutely.
therefore there are times where I think to myself, almost, I wish I could pull my sort of 20-year-old self, my 15-year-old self, and kind of channel them a bit more at the moment.
Absolutely. It's very monumental with you being, our governor and whatnot. Especially at the time that you came, or you were appointed, of course, during a global pandemic. So how has these past few months been for you since you took office, in regards to making decisions, or into pretty much putting out fires, in regards to the current pandemic that we're in?
So the first thing I'd say is that the I think there are myths out there, for some, this idea that a governor here in Bermuda, or indeed, I mean, each governor has very different responsibilities around the world, but regardless, there can be this sense that it is just a ceremonial job. It is something where you, particularly here in Bermuda with the uniform and everything, that it's all about sort of putting on that uniform and taking parts in parades. And I think there is a lot in terms of the constitutional responsibilities that sit with a governor, the day-to-day role, which means that even without the ceremonies, even without the receptions, it's been a really full-on job. You just haven't had that balance, I guess, that would normally come in those moments. It has been, there are definitely opportunities in that there are perhaps some people who I've spoken to online, or been able to engage with sort of across the world, that maybe we wouldn't have done if it hadn't been for the pandemic. But undoubtedly, the extent to which I just can't meet people in the same way, and I haven't seen as many people. There are people who I have spoken to maybe monthly or weekly, and I've never seen in the flesh, and that makes it hard, I think, settling into somewhere, and into a job like this in particular, where so much is about being able to interact with the kind of people that you do in a work basis, but also the opportunity just to get a sense of Bermuda and the culture and the people. And I definitely haven't been able to connect in a way that I would have liked to, but willing, there's still time.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there is still time in regards to with what's going on, and hopefully soon we should be, getting somewhat back to our new normal. Um, I think the your first ceremony was the passing of His Highness Prince Philip. So in regards to that, like, I mean, I did see the pictures from the ceremony, and for me personally, I was like, wow, we really have a woman governor in office. This is so cool. Like, I mean,
You can even say
obviously,
someone else for it. It's amazing.
yeah. I mean, not obviously not the circumstances wasn't cool, but it was just like, wow, like the skirt, the everything, it's just really cool. Um, so I mean, you know, how have you been? Because obviously you've been asked the question over and over again, but being the first woman of color, uh, in such a high position, like, what do you feel that is a little pressure? Like, I remember seeing in one interview that when you walk among the halls in the government house, you see your predecessors, and it's like, wow, they don't look nothing like me. Like, how does that how does that affect you on a daily basis, like as far as being, this person or this woman in such a high office?
So the first of all, I suppose, like, I didn't just drop here from the sky. Right? So there is no, and I say that just because actually there was just so much along the way that shapes us all. Like, we're all shaped by the experiences that we have, and a lot of that has prepared me for it. So it is not that uncommon to it's never meant, it's never had the same magnitude to be the kind of first, and there'll be times when I may have been the first and just not even thought about it, and it wasn't even an issue. But I haven't had the luxury throughout my career of always having people or having someone around me who looks like me or shares the experience. But there is the kind of the significance and the symbolism of this role is on a different level in that sense. So, and I do, it doesn't, I wouldn't describe it as pressure necessarily. I do think it gives me quite an acute sense of responsibility on a day-to-day basis, because I, if what I do and the way I carry myself in this job, the extent to which I can prove not just that a woman can be the governor, can become the governor, that a Black woman can become the governor, but actually that it can be that I can do it well. Like, that someone like that, it isn't an hindrance, because I think that undoubtedly there'll be, for some people, that feel that something is lost, like some of the magic of the role is lost by having a woman in it, or having a sort of a Black woman or a Black person in general in that job. And so for me, there is definitely a sense of duty and a sense of responsibility to do this well. And I've always wanted, in anything that I have done in my career and anything I've done within my community, I'm driven by an overriding desire to just have made things better by being there. Not that I'm going to change the world, not that sort of suddenly all the ills and the nonsense is going to have gone away and the world's going to be drastically different, but by being there, it was better. And so, and that's what I hope for this. I genuinely bring all of myself to this job, and I'm looking forward to doing that going forward. And if I can do that, then I will be able to walk away confident that I haven't sort of either sort of pulled the ladder up behind me, or indeed sort of given evidence to people who might think, actually, that's why you shouldn't have a woman. That's why a woman can't do that job, or you shouldn't have a woman in those sense of responsibilities. And if one child growing up sort of thinks about the fact that they can do something that people told them that they couldn't do, or that they didn't think that they could do themselves, then that will give me a sense of pride too.
That's actually very awesome. Um, and it actually kind of segues into my next question. Um, so you mentioned, of course, being a woman of color and being a Black woman, of course. Um, what advice would you give to young people in particular, young Black women in particular? Because every time I think about, the likes of yourself, Vice President Kamala Harris, and even Dr. Karika Weldon, who has been so influential
Absolutely.
during this pandemic, I can't help but think of, when my nieces grow up, and Maury and Luna and Peyton are just looking at the likes of you and those other great women, and they're like, they look like me. It gives them a sense of pride. So, what advice would you offer to young women, especially young Black women in particular, who maybe want to be the next governor or want to be the next premier, or anybody of a hierarch position in their career path?
So one of the things that I would say is that you're not alone, and I think I definitely know for myself and from my friendship groups that we can feel the pressure quite a lot, and think that, and the struggle is hard at times. It is genuinely hard, and that's why my "you're not alone" is not just about sort of having other people around you, but also just in that sense that it's not, it can sometimes look easy. And that's the thing that worries me when, for the sort of example that is given, because it is great that, growing up, I could see women that looked like me who were achieving in sports and in music and had great sort of careers in that realm. But it also, you could feel that sense of sort of pigeonholing that would come through, whether it was teachers or society more generally, that kind of gives you that sense that there are things that you can do and things that are not quite for you, and that can be tiring, and it can be hard to be in an environment when it doesn't feel like you can fail or falter in the way that others can and still get up. But I would say that you're genuinely not alone. And I would also advise people really not to let others kind of constrain them. Not to allow others to kind of decide what your path is or what you can do, because it won't always come from, it's good to have advice, and I'm a firm believer in, and I really do genuinely go to lengths to try and make sure I'm getting feedback from people, and that can be more hard, it can be more difficult as you go on in your career, because people can feel be a bit harder to kind of say to someone. It takes a kind of strength of spirit to be able to give feedback to someone who is in a position of authority. But I need that on a day-to-day basis, and I would encourage people to always surround themselves and make sure that they know who they can turn to that can tell them, actually, you were wrong, or you really do need to focus on this area, or you do need to be able to think. So not all, like, some bits of feedback will come from a place which is just not found, and you have to be able to just kind of filter, block some of the negativity out, but also to be able to listen to the areas where you can grow. And I would also say, and I say this to my children every day, you have to still work really hard, because it is not easy out there. It's really not easy, and I don't think it's easy anywhere. But you have to work hard, and you have to take pride in everything that you do. And that's what I have done throughout, and it has guided me well. And I encourage my children to do exactly the same thing, whatever you are doing. We don't always get the opportunity to have a retake.
Absolutely. That's actually some very sound advice. Very great. So we're gonna wrap up the interview, but I have to ask, because we're a radio station. I can't go without asking. If you had to choose between this or that, Tupac or Biggie?
Tupac.
What? I like it.
Yeah, no, they're both. Like I still listen to both of them like a lot, but for me, definitely, yeah.
What?
I'm sorry. I feel like okay,
no,
all right.
No, hey, man. That's what I'm talking about. Listen, I need for this COVID thing to be over so I can have a full-on conversation with you.
There we go.
Or some music history.
With some music, I was going to say.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? With some music. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so Prince or Whitney Houston?
Whitney.
Yes. Come on.
Whitney.
All right, Your Excellency. That's what I'm talking about. You got some good taste. So wait a minute. All right. So with your children, do they know, like, the Tupacs, the Biggie?
Yeah. So this one's hard. It was much easier when they were babies and you could still play what you wanted around them. But I suddenly realized when I knew they were kind of much more conscious, when they got to an age where they were much more conscious of what was around them, that I probably play a lot less music around me now, because I didn't have much that's kind of clean enough to kind of play on the children, so they wouldn't know theirs. I'm sure the kind of day the sort of that they enjoy music. Music is a big part for them. I'm always telling them to stop sort of singing while still sort of thinking, I know I was doing this at their age as well, kind of walking around. But I don't know, they will, I hope they will come to learn a lot more of it. But it does, it's firstly the language, which has probably meant that they would not know those two, despite maybe when they've kind of walked into a room and I hadn't quite realized they were coming in. But it was a language, but also I'm just much more conscious as a mother to girls as well, that there are things, that there are sort of images that come through and stereotypes that come through in some of the music that I listen to and I enjoy, that I don't really want them being exposed to right now.
Absolutely, I can understand that.
But I feel like I'm at a filtering age more so than they are.
I completely understand. I get it, but no, that was actually some very good reasonings, and I really thought you were gonna say Biggie. I ain't gonna
Really?
front. I really thought you were gonna say Biggie. I don't know why. But no, Pac. I mean, they both, like you said, they both have the greats about it. But I really just thought you were gonna say Biggie. So
I think there's music to dance to, there's music to listen to,
absolutely.
and that one probably divides those two as well for me.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Your Excellency, for taking time out of your busy schedule to chop it up with myself and, of course, the listeners. And again, I know Mother's Day is coming up as well, so wishing you and yours a happy Mother's Day. Alrighty, but thank you so much again, and have a great day.
You too. Great to speak to you.